Is it okay?
Okay, so I start again. Hi Ben, nice to meet you in the video. So I was saying I was very undecided on which text to choose. Hi Alice. Which text to prefer for this reading group, because really the beauty of the ethics is the connections between concepts. You may know that it's written in a geometrical way, I mean by propositions and demonstrations and notes to the demonstration at the best, and this makes it apparently very logical. There are I found what I think are flaws in this logic, but nevertheless the continuous calling on what has been told before is very important. So you don't need to read it from the first part until the last one. Actually, one very interesting way to read it is starting from the last propositions and going back, because they get their meaning by the connections. And the other feature that is typical of philosophy, actually, is that Spinoza takes concepts and words and changes their meaning. So in the propositions we read, those of the last part of the ending part of the fourth part of ethics, those about the free man, you'll find Spinoza speaking of the state, but what he means for state is not what we do mean with this word. It is rather the Machiavellian idea, where state is just Italian, it's just like in Italian a condition. Human groups can be in different states, in different conditions, in different way to agree. This is not our Hegelian modern absolutistic way to understand the state. And when Spinoza makes this uses this term in this way, he is already attacking the Hobbesian way of thinking of it. And this was just one example. The most important example in Spinoza's ethics is the way he defines God. He doesn't actually attack the monotheistic idea of God. He just says, and he says God is just nature, God, Deus sive natura, that is God. We can use the word God or the word nature in an interchangeable way, because he totally destructures, gives a totally different meaning to the word and to the concept towards the Christian or monotheistic way to understand it. So I suggested to read the last part of the ethics, that is of the fourth part of the ethics, that is where Spinoza explains, drafts his ideal of what a man should be. He states in the foreword of this part of the ethics, it's just an image that allows us to think what are we aiming to. It's not when we talk of perfection, this is just the idea of perfection is just a projection of when we make a job, and when it's accomplished, it's perfect, it's done. To generalize this idea of what is completed, and to think that there are models of reality, universal models of reality towards which we must look, is just a way of thinking, and this has no reality. It's just something that helps us to understand in a human way what is good for humans. In The Dawn of Everything, there is a small note by David Graeber about you cannot judge men, you cannot say men are good or bad, just like you cannot say you cannot say humanity is good or bad, just as you cannot say humanity is fat or thin. The measure there is human beings, and a human being can be fatter or thinner than the average, but it makes no sense to make general assumptions on it. This is the same thing Spinoza tells us in the foreword of this part of the ethics. It makes no sense to judge of perfection. There is no finality at all in the world, and God has no goals. There are no goals in nature. The idea of a goal is just a projection formed from our idea of what is a job well done. God has no finality. God is just a power that expresses, a power to cause, to make things, that expresses itself. And to make you understand what does Spinoza mean by saying it, I asked you to read also the first part of the ethics from proposition 16 onwards. Proposition 16 says, from the necessity of the divine nature must follow an infinite number of things in infinite ways, that is, all things which can fall within the sphere of an infinite intellect. Spinoza's God is a nature, and it's an entity that produces effects. To be is to produce effects. And the only measure of good and bad is how much you can express this infinite creativity of God. So in this foreword of the fourth part, Spinoza says, in what follows then, I shall mean by good that which we certainly know to be a means of approaching more nearly to the type of human nature which we have set before ourselves. By bad, that which we certainly know to be a hindrance to us in approaching the said type. Again, we shall say that men are more perfect or more imperfect in proportion as they approach more or less nearly to the said type. For it must be specially remarked that when I say that a man passes from a lesser to a greater perfection or vice versa, I do not mean that he is changed from one essence or reality to another. For instance, a horse would be as completely destroyed by being changed into a man as by being changed into an insect. What I mean, I stress this part, is that we conceive the thing's power of action insofar as this is understood by its nature to be increased or diminished. Lastly, by perfection in general, I shall mean reality. In other words, each thing's essence insofar as it exists and operates in a particular manner and without paying any regard to its duration. Also, the meaning of the word to exist changes in this conception. To exist is to be cause, is to produce effects following one's nature. And natures differ not in essence, because the only essence in the world is that of God, and everything that exists is an expression. I think Sufis says God is the dancer and we are the dance. This is very similar to this concept. Everything that exists is an expression of the infinite power of existing and being a cause of God. Everything that exists is just a particular, a mode of expression of this infinite nature. And beings differ, if they differ, just in terms of complexity. Spinoza quotes, he doesn't quote, he uses a formula that was from Giordano Bruno. And this is why I wrote in my introduction email, if anybody knows, has read Arthur Lovejoy, The Great Chain of Being, this is meaningful in that frame, but I didn't read that book. So Spinoza quotes, without saying it, Giordano Bruno, who said, omnia quam diversis gradibus animata sunt. Everything has a soul, everything is alive, but there are different grades of life that are different grades of complexity. So, and Spinoza never gives a definition of what a human being is. He only says the complexity of his body is the important feature of a human being, because this complexity allows humans to be many things. He says, and this is Deleuze's favorite quote from Spinoza, we don't know what a body can do. We don't know how much complexity and potential is in a human body. And since there is no difference between mind and body, and they are just two attributes, two ways to see, to watch the same thing. We don't know how much complexity is in our mind. An accomplished man is our ideal of a man, of a human, sorry, is a human that is as much as possible a cause of its effects, and that can encompasses more reality. The idea is essence is reality, and reality is power, and power is ability to create, to absorb as much as possible of ideas, things, realities, in connection with other human beings. Does anybody have comments, questions, or something they like? Was that clear enough?
I would maybe ask a question. I just about like I don't know if this was in the scope of this, but like just I know in part one, like he talks about quantity, right? And he talks about like basically attributes, and like how, you know, therefore the only thing that we can prove is God, because God encompasses everything, and because like a thing, things have attributes, and two things don't share attributes, right? They're all distinct, and therefore the only thing that we can prove is that which encompasses all attributes. But like but when you talk about like measuring, so like my question is about like complexity, right? Because it like, how does he measure complexity exactly? And it would sound like maybe like quantity of attributes, but how, like does he talk about at some point like where attributes, like how attributes are discrete and like separate and countable? Or
the fundamental structure of reality for Spinoza is the only one substance that has infinite attributes, and that expresses itself in infinite modes, in infinite ways. Ways and attributes are infinite in a different sense. There is a difficulty there in Spinoza's philosophy, because he says attributes are infinite. I don't know. But he only talks of extension and thought. And he talks of a strong parallelism between those two attributes. The scheme here is from Cartesius, from Descartes, which means Descartes, in his Discours de la Méthode, said the only reality we can know is our mind, because the only thing we know is that we think, we can think, we can see ourselves, we are aware that we think. So we are certain to be a subject, thinking subject. We are not sure of the existence of the extension. He said there are two substances, but the one, the mind, is certain, and the extension, the material side, is not certain. It can be an illusion. The only guarantee that this is not an illusion is that God cannot be so bad as to trick us in believing something that is not true. It is very weak as a justification for the existence of the outer world. And at the end of the day, Descartes ends up in having two substances that cannot touch each other, that cannot have any relationships. And this makes a difficulty that Spinoza criticizes very strongly in the introduction to the third part of Ethics, saying when you separate those two attributes, you will never be able to justify their union. And so you end up with the silly ideas like the animal spirits that are so tiny that the mind can move them and therefore can move the body. Spinoza says this is ludicrous. Either mind and body, mind and materia are separated, or they are the same. There is no other solution. And Descartes also ends up by thinking of a soul, a mind that is in direct connection with God, with the Christian God. And this means a subjectivity that has its abstract rules given by God as laws, and a mind that must conquer and control the body, because just as God is over and controls reality. Spinoza criticizes this idea and goes back to Sant'Anselmo's demonstration of the existence of God. Sant'Anselmo is a medieval scholar who was considered on the edge of heresy because he was very happy of this. He thought he proved the existence of God. He said God is that what cannot, I cannot say it in English, sorry, just a moment. God is the thing of which nothing can be thought of bigger And since existence is something, we cannot think of this big thing as non-existent. It's a bit tricky, but the consequence of this idea, this logical idea of God, is God is everything. Like Indian said, Tatvamasi, you are God, everything is God. Because if there is nothing outside God, and if you think of what is exists because it's the biggest thing of the universe, this means everything is in God, and therefore everything is God. Spinoza refers to this idea and to this tradition. And is called a pantheist. Everything is God, and mind and materia. Do you say material? Are the same thing, seen from two different point of view. And you have not to justify their union because they are united from the beginning. They are the same thing, the same infinite God that produce infinite effects. Modes, ways are the effects, and they are infinite in another sense than attributes, and they are events with no existence, but that is given by their being part of the entire existence of God. The other difference between Spinoza and Descartes and Spinoza and monotheism is that God is not transcendent, is not something outside our reality. It is actually our reality, and it is the most knowledgeable thing of the world. It's something we all are, therefore something that we all know. We just need to think it. And knowledge of God has two senses in a way. It is the basic knowledge of existence being an infinite power of creation. And on the other side is the equaling human mind to the power of this infinite creativity. And this is why Spinoza always says other human beings, other beings that are at our same level of complexity, of ability to express a greater part of the essence of God, are what is most useful to us. The idea of convenire, that is a complex concept that encompasses both to agree and to be similar to, is crucial in Spinoza's ethics. Human beings are that what is most useful for us because they are those who are more like to us, and they are like us in their being at a higher level of complexity and creativity than, say, a stone or a chicken. So Alexandre Matheron, who was one of the group of Louis Althusser, said that of Spinoza is an ethics of similarity. And just because it's an ethic of similarity, he never gives a real definition of a man, of a human being, sorry. But he says what a free human being can be. Was that clear enough, Ben? And was that too long?
No, thanks so much. But my question was more like, maybe like, I don't know, like, but someone else can ask a question though, but was like how he defines complexity, maybe more, you know?
He doesn't actually. He
Okay.
just he just says there are different degrees of being, and this idea that being is not just yes or no is very strange for us. You can exist more or less, and
Sorry, 1 second.
sorry. This comes from Platon and Plotin and Neoplatonism. There are two main traditions in Spinoza's thought that are Stoicism and Neoplatonism. Stoicism, Stoic fundamental idea was that of logoi spermatikoi, that is the universal nous, the universal mind, expresses itself in like seeds of thought that are logoi that flourish in the reality. And Platonism and Neoplatonism, on the other side, focus on the one, on being as the essence of being, of reality, being a great one that, and this is Platon's Parmenide, that is like a sphere that cannot be even thought of, because at the same moment you think of it, there is a division between the thinker and the being, and so there is a decrease in reality, and this idea of a descension from the unique and universal being that is that you can call God, or but that is the infinite essence of reality of being, is also the one that is taken in by the Zohar, the idea of the tree of Sephirot is Maimonides tried to connect these two ideas and gave a very Neoplatonical interpretation of the Zohar. And but let's not go into it, even if it's fascinating. Don't ask me about the Zohar because okay, so sorry.
Can I also ask one question?
Yes, of course.
In the beginning, you talk about Hobbes and how he attacked him. And so I just wonder what would be a political implication of this point of view, of Spinoza's point of view, specifically because, like, to me, being non-philosopher, what you describe about Spinoza's views looks like a very shortcut of Bashkar. All these realities that's complex, complexity is increasing, and the life is everywhere, even a stone, and the electron could be free, and so on. That's what was David describing Bashkar. But it looks like very contemporary ideas because Bashkar was a philosopher of science, and it wasn't like a medieval, Jewish guy or like not Christian, of course. So.
Yeah, actually, one of my dream book is one about the connection between Spinoza and Indian philosophy. But I never found such a book, such a study. And I don't think that we have materials to prove this connection. Nevertheless, Spinoza lived in Netherlands, and the Netherlands, the company of Indus wasn't English at that time. It was Netherlandish. So it is sure that there were connections and that travelers and merchants that had been in the Indias came back in Netherlands and outspoke. Dutch East India Company. Thank you, Anshul. But I never found any actual proof of or study about it. So absolutely, I'm sure there are connections with Bashkar, but I never read him either. I'm sure there are connections with the history of the idea of the great chain of being, that is actually this idea that things can have more or less reality, more or less existence. But yes, I cannot tell you the connection with Bashkar because I don't know this philosopher. I will study him, I swear, I promise.
And about Hobbes?
Yes, about Hobbes, the most interesting text about it is in Tractatus Theologico-Politicus, the 17th chapter. It's fascinating because in the 16th chapter, Spinoza produces almost perfectly Hobbesian theory. He says the state, the definition is that the one I gave before. The state is born when we join, when we agree to join our forces and to transmit them to the state. Nevertheless, in the 17th chapter, he starts by saying, oh, okay, this theory is really wonderful. It looks very beautiful. It works on paper, it works perfectly. Unless in reality, it cannot work, because nobody can transfer his power to anybody else, since one's power is his own essence, and you cannot transfer your essence. So the problem of how can men join forces remains. You cannot build this wonderful building of sovereignty based on just one monarch, simply because it doesn't work. This is not the reality. The reality is a state, a monarch, has power only until people give him, only until people decide to give him. So let's, and this is more the Tractatus Politicus, the political treatise. Let's have a look at how concretely people agree and join forces. So that of Spinoza's is not an abstract construction on what ought to be in an ideal world where you can decide to obey to a sovereign. It is really a physics of politics. You judge politics on the basis of the relationships of powers, where powers are not the power to encroach your will on somebody. Power is actually everybody's ability to produce effects. So I loved in Bullshit Jobs the idea that our goal in life is to thrive at the pleasure of being a cause. This is absolutely Spinoza. And so in the political treatise, Spinoza says the problem when humans join forces, they together have more power. This could be trivial if we weren't in face of a philosopher that says the very existence is power, and to have more power means to have more existence, to have more creativity, to have more ability to be a cause. But joining forces becomes the problem, and it is a problem that cannot be solved by an abstract social contract. It is a problem that stays even inside the state, and so Spinoza can judge, for example, monarchy by saying the power of an individual, a monarch, will never be at level with the power of the multitude. This concept of multitude is the one that Tony Negri took from Spinoza, is the one that made Spinoza very à la mode in the past decades. Actually, Negri abuses this concept. He is just looking for a way to call the subject, the Hegelian or Marxist subject, a way that is not so already boring, like the concept of people or working class or etc., etc. He takes this concept that is neutral, that just means a quantity of people and a big number of people, and gives to this concept a sign, a positive sign. This is a judgment, and this is a mistake concerning Spinoza, because multitude is just a numerical concept, and it just its use is about treating politics like physics. So you judge a monarchy by the fact that a monarch's strength cannot be at level with that of multitude. So as a matter of fact, monarchy doesn't exist. It is always an oligarchy. It is always a condition where the monarch needs to be supported by other people, by an oligarchy. And in this physics of politics, aristocracy or oligarchy is the more stable form of politics, because a group of people can be at level, an organized group of people can be at level with the multitude. What is missing in Spinoza's political treatise is exactly the chapter on democracy. We don't know if it's whether because Spinoza died too soon, he was writing the political treatise when he died, or because of a conceptual difficulty. But the fact is that reliqua desiderantur, we desire very much what is missing. Nevertheless, what's more important for me is the way he framed these concepts in terms of power that is existence. And this means also it doesn't frame it in terms of good or bad, in terms of judgment. He just starts from the certainty that humans are all equal in as much they are all creative beings at the same level of complexity, able to cooperate, and that become more existent, even more existent, as soon as they cooperate. And I forgot how I started this sentence, so, but I hope the meaning is clear. Okay, are there any questions still, or did any of you read the few propositions I suggested, or we can I maybe could explain the propositions 16.7. But I think it may be clear now. So either I read or I watched the Zoom. So I'll be silent for a moment. If anybody wants to say anything.
I'm happy to jump in if that's
Yes,
possible.
thank you.
Thank you, Simona, for the demonstration, for all the explanations about this text. It's quite complicated, and I actually don't understand myself fully, for sure. So I'm not so much concerned about what God is for Spinoza, and whether it exists or not, and so on. But what Spinoza says about the free person is quite interesting. So thank you for suggesting to read this text. I think it's actually particularly interesting in the light of the current pandemic. So you were saying that so Spinoza is basically saying that the free person, if I understood well, is one who's conscious of the necessity that we have to face, and basically she is trying to understand what's going on in the world, what are the rules, the laws of the universe slash God, and then you basically have to align your will accordingly. Just before this reading group, I was watching David Graeber on YouTube, and about what he was saying about the pandemic, and so he was asked about COVID, and I think what are the countries that do well and those that don't. That was a while ago, right? That was at the beginning of the pandemic, and he says that it's not a division between authoritarian countries and the so-called democratic countries. He says no, because at the time China was doing very well, but also South Korea. So basically, what he's saying is that there was it's a division of trust in institution. He says that countries where infection rates are the highest are countries where people don't believe in what they read in newspapers and from the authorities. And this is because most of the time lie to them. So they are right in a sense to be skeptical, but what you are dealing with the pandemic is basically skepticism that is killing us. So that's more or less, if I understood well, what he was saying. And going back to Spinoza and the necessities of universe, you have some necessities, like you have forms of necessities, like economic necessities. The infamous there is no alternative, which are not necessities at all. I guess here, everyone here is basically is actually convinced that we can organize things differently, and that we can organize economic and social things differently. But with the pandemic, you deal with they're rather different necessities, like a hard necessity, if you will. You can't really choose another way, because the other way is basically that we're all going to die, basically. So what do you guys think of? You know, it's like a more like a, I don't know. It's I know it's. Or you can this kind of debate that can really go wrong, and I'm sorry, I don't want to because it's quite slippery. But like if we remain at a more theoretical level with this example, what do you guys think about that, you know, the free person and necessities of universe?
May I answer first? So there is a huge difference between the necessity of universe and the pretended necessity of economics. And the difference is human world and reality at large. Actually, what Spinoza says is not just understand the necessity. It is understand that God has nothing. There is no finality in the world. Human beings are not in a privileged position in rapport to the universe, and there is no guarantee. This is what ancient materialists and Epicurus said. Gods, if they exist, are indifferent. They don't care for us. And the difference, let's take Descartes once more. The difference is to say it exists a God that is a king, actually, a legislator, and that gives us laws and protection. He guarantees that human beings, preferably white, European, male human beings, are the highest creation of universe, and he will protect us at the same moment when he gives us laws that cannot be obeyed, and then punished us for not being at level with his commandments. Spinoza says this is bullshit. This is just a projection of our human world. This is just superstition. God is not indifferent. God is everything, and understanding the necessity of everything amounts at the same of being, equaling everything. So what's good or bad concerns the human world, and it doesn't concern God. It's because there is no finality, there is no guarantee, there is no perfection that should be aimed for. There is just human beings, a human world that where good and bad are what is good or bad for humans. as for, I don't actually understand what's the relationship between infection are higher where people don't believe in newspapers and this idea. But the point is that economic necessity is a fake, is a fraud. And because economics is an human construction. And it must be judged in terms of good or bad for humans. So please explain me your question, because I didn't understand the connection.
No, I don't want to mobilize the conversation. I'm just like I'm just saying, like, and I think this is what he was saying, that there is no. I mean, it's not really useful to you know, believing that there is no COVID, that some people were saying at the time was is you know, it's exactly this kind of thing, you know. So this is a kind of I think I found it was a good example of the kind of necessities that are necessities of the universe.
I understand now. Was my answer clear? Or no?
Yeah, I mean, what you say about what Spinoza is basically saying is that what we are most of all now are quite convinced of. I don't know. I mean, yeah, that no. And anyone else would like to participate? Who would like to jump into this debate? Those who didn't say anything yet, and I can see some new faces. So you know, please first of all, welcome, and please jump in if you would like to say something. You can either do it on the chat or yeah. Ask a question or just a comment. And people we know already can also have their say, obviously.
I think what's interesting in other parts, it's a long time since I read Spinoza, and I tried to read more of it today, but I was just too tired. He talks about the emotions, and I think he's somewhere buried in there is probably quite a modern view of psychology, which his predecessors wouldn't have come up with, I think.
Yeah, he talks of emotions in just using this scheme he made about power and creativity and existence, and less power, less existence. So the fundamental distinction is between what makes us more powerful, what gives us more existence, and the thing that gives us more existence at all, of all, is knowing, being aware we are God at the end of the day. And the free man, he talks of a man led by reason. Reason is another term he totally redesigns. So the free man is not a man that got rid of emotions, but is a man that is guided by positive emotions, that is by emotions that are powerful and that are expressions of his becoming more powerful. So the fundamental feelings are Letizia and Tristizia, that is joy and sadness, and all he builds here too a physics of emotions, where each emotion is evaluated in terms of its the feeling of passing to a more and higher level of power or to a lower level of power. And from this frame, enormous consequences arise. For instance, in this free man chapter of the Ethics, he says repentance is always bad. Punishment is always bad. What you just add evil to evil with punishment or with repentance, or with trying to, when you try to attack and destroy something, or when you are indignant, this is just an expression of lower power of your soul, of your mind. And Spinoza says indignation is an expression of an impotens animi, of a soul, of a mind that is powerless. And this is very close to nowadays psychology. It is very clear to me, but also to contemporary psychology, that men become, and in this case, I'm really saying men and not humans, men become violent, need to encompass their power on other beings, humans, when they feel powerless, when they are the need to be more powerful than another human being is a sign of the powerlessness of your soul. And on the contrary, the only way to make things better and to change things is to let other people become more powerful, more strong, to help them to be stronger. I don't know if I can find them quickly, but in the third part of ethics, just a moment, I try to find it. No. No, doesn't work. There are some very non-violent and strong propositions about what to do when you have to change other people's behavior. Maybe I can find it. Just a moment. No, I cannot find it. So So that's it. A free man doesn't repent because repentance is a diminution of ability. I'm trying not to use the word power, but I think what I mean by power in Spinoza is rather clear now. A free man, we started by a free man thinks the least of death, and his meditation, he thinks only of life. His meditation is a meditation on life, because it's a meditation on the infinite power that is existence, and of infinite creation that is life, and this arises from the knowledge of the unity of universe and of the infinite creativity of universe. And this knowledge is the most powerful thing a human being can reach, and sharing this knowledge is actually the fundamental goal for humans. So anybody? Nika is walking, looking for a power for her computer. So
I'd like to ask something about Spinoza, because I never read directly Spinoza, but I am a really reader of Erich Fromm, and Erich Fromm is a really Spinozian guy because he always talks about Spinoza. He really loves Spinoza. So like there are this kind of two dimension in Spinoza, I think, when he talks about the activity, like the energy, the positiveness, the joy, the Spinozian joy, and in the other side, the sadness, the negativity, the passivity. And I think it's like, this is being part of the existence, being part of everything, or not being part of everything. It's like the really challenge of human being is this, put the energy in the life, being part of the everything, or no. But I'd like to ask you, all of you, what do you think about these two dimensions? Because I always have readden this in Erich Fromm, and I really love it because I think it's reality. It's like everything is God, and we need to be part of this, like believing in it, like in a sensible way. But and Simona, I think you before said that like there is this more existence or less existence, or maybe it's the same two dimension of like activity or passivity. So it's like, what do you think about this? If I'm right of seeing this in Spinoza, or maybe I'm not right. It's like, because I really like this this way. So it's like, what do you think about it? Just debate about this cool part of it.
Oh, yes, it's well, it's totally Spinoza's theory of emotions. Actually, he puts it in terms of activity or passivity. He says the very essence of human beings, but of everything, is conatus, that is that can be translated by strive for existence and by desire. Deleuze prefers to translate it by desire, but the idea is to strive for, the fundamental idea is the strive for existence that is, it's not just inertia. When it's defined, it looks like inertia. Everything strives to keep existing. I might find the definition, but actually, just a moment. No, I cannot find it so soon. So at the core of it is difficult. My back thesis was about individuum and multitudo in Spinoza. It is difficult to define an individuum. Yet there is a difference between an individual. There isn't a difference between an individuum and the reality at large. The final goal for a person is to understand the connection with infinity, and to know we are just part of it, and to grasp as much as possible of this union. But on the other side, every being has its peculiar essence and its peculiar way to be a cause, to produce effects. Everything produces specific effects, and this drive to continue on one's being and to produce effects is the very essence of individuals, as different from other, which means in universal terms, passivity and bad don't exist, but in terms of individuals, it does exist. You are passive in as much you are not alone. You have to face many other things, and you need many other things to exist.
But why it does exist for individuum? Like, why do we experience this, like this dichotomy, this double dimension where all the existence doesn't feel it? It's like our condemn, maybe this our illusion, maybe.
It's individuation, and it's a condemn, and at the same time, it is what we are. We are just modes, ways in which the infinite expresses itself, and it's very interesting because this is a way to look at things, organizations, people, stuff that I took from Spinoza. Every time something borns, that means separates itself from a group, a child, separates itself from, defines. To be defined means to have borders, to have an inside and an outside. Every time something constitutes itself as different from something else, it sort of kind of gets an essence that strives to produce effects, and it produce specific effects different from other beings. And passivity is you are passive in as much you the other things outside you, different from your essence, stop you from producing effects or are stronger than you. Every mode can be destroyed, and so the true poles are how much you understand your connection with the universe, and so you lost your limits. And on the other side, how much you can express this peculiar essence that is your particular and defined essence. I'm not sure I was so clear, but this is a difficult part of
I think, like, at the end, we need to connect each other and love everything like we are everything, to go out of our individuality, like the Oriental point of view. Like, I see a lot of mysticism in Spinoza every time someone talks about Spinoza.
But on the other side, this is a mystic of knowledge. So, and not just
like
knowledge,
logical mysticism, kind
of knowledge, not just logic. Yes, a lot of logic, but and knowledge is also a material thing. One key proposition in Spinoza is who has a body who is able of many things has also a mind that is able of many things. So on one side, the fundamental knowledge is I know that I am a part of God, and on the other side, you have different degrees of being, different degrees of knowledge, and different degrees of ability to do stuff with your body. So to dance or to carve wood is knowledge as much as understanding Latin. And whatever augments this ability to do or to know and is good, and other human beings are good in as much they augment this ability. Robin, would you jump in? Robin, were you saying goodbye or?
I'm sorry, I was saying goodbye. Yes.
Okay. I think we all can say goodbye. Everybody's falling asleep.
I was saying goodbye to whoever just left, but yes. But thank you for an interesting evening.
Thank you for listening. So goodbye to everybody.
Thank you for the moment.
Yeah, thank you, Simona.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Yes, it was very cool, very interesting.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you and good night.
Good night.
And أيوة.